I make bread about every other night, and I thought I would show you how easy it is. I have my starter. Think of your starter as almost dough. I like to use a lot of it because it really is batter and it's already slightly fermented. So it's done its work like on the gluten and on the phytic acid and the things that make bread hard for some people to digest. So I like to use a lot of starter. And then I need some salt. I like the salt really, really fine. And this is sea salt, so it's not super fine. So we're gonna make it fine. So I'm gonna dump that in there. You add salt to taste, however much salt you and your family like. I like it kind of salty. And then the honey is just for cutting the sourness of the starter. So I really don't want the bread to be sweet or to taste like honey. It's just for cutting the sourness and the bitterness of this sourdough starter. And because I use a lot of starter, I kind of need more honey than you might expect. And then I'm gonna mix that in a little bit. And then flour till I have a loose bread dough type consistency. So that's maybe 2/3 of a cup. I'm trying to get it just thick enough that I'll be able to handle it and stretch it in a minute. But no thicker than that, because then it ends up being too dense and chewy when it's done. So you're just trying to get it thick enough that you can handle it, because the next step is going to be to stretch it. Okay, that doesn't really look like I'm going to be able to handle it, so I'm going to go ahead and put some more flour. I started at like 9 o'clock at night, which is perfect because it's going to rest overnight, and I'll have a little 5-minute thing to do in the morning with it, and then it'll rise once more, and then I'll bake it. I'll show you all those steps. You want to use a silicone spatula or a wooden spoon or something, not stainless steel, because stainless steel can interact in some way with the microbes that are alive in the fermented sourdough starter. So you want to be aware of that, using a silicone spatula or a or a wooden spoon, something like that, something that's not stainless steel. Okay, this is starting to feel pretty good and pretty stretchy, like I could stretch it. All right, and the next step is just to leave it here to sit for 20 minutes to just kind of get all even throughout, and then I'll start the stretching process. So it's 9:30. The dough's been resting for 20 minutes, and now I just start the stretching. I just have a bowl of regular room temperature water here, and it's just to keep the dough from sticking to my hands. So just take it and fold it. And take it and fold it. I could have made this dough a little bit. I could have added a little bit more flour than I did. It's pretty soggy, but it'll be all right. It'll firm up. And you do this. You go around in a circle, stretching and turning until you've done it 5 times. And now we're going to let it sit for 15 more minutes and do this 4 more times. So it'll take an hour. I'm going to sit here and watch YouTube videos, and every 15 minutes just fold the bread again. I should have started out by saying that I had fed my starters earlier today. I have 2 jars because I like to use a lot of starter, more than most recipes call for. Like, most of my batter is starter. I consider the starter a batter. So I fed these earlier today so they'd be good and bubbly when I started this. And now that I've used most of them, there's only about, I don't know, 1/3 to 1/2 of a cup left in each of them. I need to feed it again and start building my starter back up. So I'll get a measuring cup. This is 1/4 of a cup. I'm going to put down 1/2 cup of flour in each of them. And I am using bread flour. You can use regular all-purpose flour, but bread flour does have more protein in it. And there's something about protein, which I don't know the details, the science behind it, but there's something about more protein that just makes your bread more bread-like instead of cake-like. So all-purpose flour is great for cakes and cookies and for that kind of a texture, and bread flour is good for a bread texture. But all-purpose flour works fine. Okay, so that was about 1/2 cup of flour in each one. I like my starter to be kind of thick, and after you do this for a while, you'll decide how you like your starter to be. So I don't add a whole lot of water. And if I got it really thin, I just add some more flour. And if it's not thin enough, if it's too thick, like this one is, I'll add a little bit more water. You just get a feel for it. All of this stuff is so forgiving. So don't be intimidated by any of it. It's really so easy. Always remember that people who didn't have any equipment, no spatulas, no jars, made bread like thousands and thousands of years ago, and they cooked it on an open fire. So do not be intimidated by this simple process. Also, this reminds me the best compliment I ever had. My son heard somewhere about bread being called the staff of life, my son Logan, about bread being called the staff of life, and he said to me one day, "Mom, what is that they say about bread? The staff of something of life?" And I said, "Bread is the staff of life." And he goes, "Yeah." He said, "That's what you are in this family. Get out of town." Best compliment I ever had. All right. These guys are ready to go back in the refrigerator for a day and a half until I'm ready to pull them back out. Not tomorrow, but the next day. I'll give them more flour and water, let them sit around on the counter all day and get bubbly, and then I'll be ready to start the next loaf of bread. 9:45. So here we go. And this is number 5. So it's all good. Whilst I'm waiting, I'm watching the Chateau Diaries. It's about Stephanie Jarvis in France. She's a lady from London, and she's redoing a French chateau from the 1500s, and it's so lovely and delightful and inspirational. And if you don't know about the Chateau Diaries, you can thank me later because it's lovely.
Further down, we've got the Romanesco type.
Okay, here we go. This is the 4th one. I'll end what time I started. So it's 10:15 now. I'll end at 10:30. So wet fingers. Okay, 10:33. Got a little sidetracked watching YouTube. So last one. Last thing I do before I go to bed, I made the middle of this towel damp. I'll cover this well, and just to make sure it stays damp, I'll cover it also with a dry towel to keep all that moisture in, because if you don't, you get up in the morning and the top is pretty dry. You don't want it to be dry because you're gonna do some folding and stuff with it, and you just don't want part of it to be dry. And that's it for step 1. Okay, here's what you're going to need for step 2. You're going to need some parchment paper, your utensil that's not stainless steel. You're going to need some flour and a high-sided bowl that you're going to let your dough do its second rising. I really like this one because it keeps the dough kind of compact and doesn't let it spread out a whole lot, so that it fits nicely into my Dutch oven. I'm just going through. Put some flour in. Here's the dough. I hope you can see how bubbly it is. This one didn't rise as well as they sometimes do, and I think it's because it's a little wet. So I'm going to be working some more flour into here to get it just the consistency of bread dough that I like, which is not too wet, not too dry, just somewhere right in the right in the middle of that. Sprinkle some flour on the top, just because I know I'm trying to work some in and I don't want it to stick to my hands too much. There's honestly nothing more forgiving, I don't think, that you could ever make than bread. Just all the time when I feel a spot that's a little too wet, I just put some flour there. I'm gonna work it in just until I can handle it without it sticking to my hands or feeling really wet. Yeah, this is getting pretty good. And then I'm just going to pull it apart again, expose any more places that are too wet, put a little flour on. That's nice. So now I'm going to put my parchment paper in my high-sided bowl. And I'm going to shake the bread, which really just means kind of folding it underneath, still finding spots that are a little too wet. Okay, folding it under so that all the seam is at the bottom. It's like in a ball, but the seam is at the bottom. Yeah. And then I'm going to plop it into this bowl, seam side down. And it's going to sit here for 2 hours and do its second rise. And that's all there is to step 2. Step 3, I'm gonna put my Dutch oven in the oven, and I've got it set for 475, and I'm just going to let it get at about 350 degrees, and I'm going to pop the bread in. So. I find that if I wait until it gets all the way up to 475, that the bottom burns. I'm working out how to get bread that's cooked all the way through and beautifully brown on top without being burnt on the bottom. So the instructions the recipe I was following in the beginning said to heat it up to 475 and then put the bread in, but I just find that the bottom gets burned. So it's still a work in progress. I'll keep you posted. Okay, so temperature's up to 335. Just gonna go ahead and put it in there. I don't want any parchment paper catching on fire, so I'm going to cut the corners off. Stick really back on. I'm gonna set the timer for 25 minutes. And there I go. That's it. Step 3. And in 25 minutes, take it out of the oven, and it should be good to go. Oh. Can't look at it until it's too light. So, take it out and sit it just on there. And let it cook for 5 more minutes. Okay, timer on. I'm gonna do 4. I'm gonna check it again in 4 minutes and see if the top looks more golden and cooked. And yeah, be right. I just put it back in on the rack by itself because the Dutch oven is so hot that the bottom burns. And so this is me trying to figure out how to get it cooked all the way through and golden on top without being burnt on the bottom. So we'll see how it turns out. Okay, let's check it. I'm going to let it go 1 more minute. I think it's pretty much there, but the top could still be more golden brown, and it's getting there. Here we go. Okay. For that beauty. All right. Then you take it, flip it over, try not to get burned. It should sound hollow, and it does. There was a hole in the paper. And it's kind of stuck. I'll get that off after it cools. But look, even being careful, still got to get it figured out how to get the bottom more like the top. It's a work in progress. Cooking always is. I get out my pizza pan that has holes on it and let it sit there so that it doesn't, the heat coming off of it doesn't create moisture and steam and make it soggy on the bottom, just so the heat has somewhere to go. And just let it cool now. Let's see. And in 2 days, I'll start it all over again.